You ready?
Yes.
Hello and welcome to Hello and welcome to Jazz Hands, a podcast of Hello and welcome to Onesies, a podcast of onesies and wonders and blunders. My name's Andrew.
My name's Emily.
And this season we are talking about Dracula. Nope, we're not. We're not talking about Dracula the series. It is over. Our 21 episode Odyssey is over, and now we are on to Chessgame, a 1983 British series that is technically a mini series, but if it had been the most popular show in the world, I bet they could have done another season. So it qualifies.
I think they should remake it.
You know,
it's fucking good so far.
Did you try watching Slow Horses?
I don't know what Slow Horses is. I know we talked about it last time, but I don't know what it is. I've been really busy this week. I've been so busy.
Gary Oldman's British spy thing.
Ooh. I know Gary Oldman's a bad guy, but I like Gary Oldman. He's one of my problematic faves.
Farts a lot.
Oh, gross.
List all of your male faves who aren't problematic. Go. One.
Do I have one? Lee Pace.
Matt Berry's not.
No, Matt Berry.
Problematic. Well, see, there you go. See, that's why you always just keep Josh Hart.
I don't know.
Pocket.
I don't know. His character on House of Fools was a little bit problematic. He had a fondness for a certain type of lady that was a little problematic. The character.
We'll be talking about that at some point in this episode too, because British ladies were very horny in 1983.
Fuck yeah.
Fuck
yeah.
Were they, or is it just Terence Stamp? They're just like, what's up, Terence Stamp?
I don't know. He was sexy as hell, though.
Okay. So, Chessgame starring Terence Stamp, other people who are in it.
Robin Sachs. We've been
Robin Sachs. We've been talking about in pre-show. Then there is Michael Culver, who's sort of important. I'm looking through the names. I've got their character names written down. That'll be fine.
Yeah.
And then Carmen de Dusotoy.
Yeah, I should have done a Google on how to pronounce her name. Satoy. I don't know.
She's in it too. She's important. Okay.
Yes, she is important.
We open at a lake where they are extending a highway or something, and there are some politicians talking on camera. When they get called over to the lake, so they weren't at the lake to start, but they walk over to the lake, which they are draining so they can do the construction. None of this is important. Yeah. And they find a World War II bomber. But it's not a World War II bomber. It's a 1956 missing transport plane. It's a Pembroke plane.
Which will be important throughout this whole thing, kind of.
And there is a skeleton in the pilot seat.
Yes. Yes, there is.
We then cut to Terence Stamp watching it on his TV with his tea, but then he goes back over to his other program, which is a fake gangster movie.
That's exactly what I have written in my notes. Fake gangster movie.
Oh, we didn't do our three things.
I don't know that I have three things. I want to talk about Penelope Wilton. I want to talk about a little bit of Crumpet. And then, I mean, that's pretty much all I have.
Obviously you do. Okay, so I will talk about... Oh, yes. How about the Israelis have been filming the whole episode? The whispering, and there's a little bit of Crumpet. I don't know, naughty Sherry. Okay, or workplace, appropriate for the workplace. So we should also note this is part one of the episode. It did not tell us it was part one, but we are going to get an end of part one. So this is going to be interesting to see if they keep this up through the whole series into breaking it into three different parts. But we then cut to, so we're at Terence Stamp's nice little farmhouse where he's watching a faint gangster movie about Ma Kelly and Lefty. He gets a call from work and he's like, oh, are you watching the gangster movie too? And then he gets put out when his boss doesn't want to talk about the gangster movie.
Yeah, he's
which is very weird.
he's presenting as sort of I don't know, sort of grumpy. So what they're actually talking about is the news about the plane. But when he starts talking about the gangster movie, his face gets screwed up when they're like, "No, silly, the news." In their very British upper crust way. But
Snotty Brits is one of
yeah,
my notes.
he
Snotty
seems
Brits.
he seems to be just sort of like cynical and maybe a little grumpy getting a phone call so late at night, which comes back in the next scene.
Yes, and it is late at night. We haven't established yet, but it is at least 11 o'clock at night. So he then goes into work, which we now establish is a spy place because there's a security guard.
He has to put a little card in a slot for the giant jail doors to open, pull his card out before he goes in. He's got his own office where he changes his clothes. He pulls
into
his
his
pants
formal
down.
attire. Yes.
Oh my God, it was so funny. I was like, was that actually a thing that happened? Apparently it was.
Men just changing. I mean, they're British. They just do it all the time. They drop their pants in front of other men.
Other men come in. At least it wasn't a woman. I mean, that could be sexual harassment. I mean, not that it would have been.
It actually kind of comes up that that's a possibility. Yes, it's incredible. But yes, so he meets the other guys in the department, including Robin Sachs as Hugh Roskill, and that's Michael Culver as Nick Hanna, and Terence Stamp's name is David Aubrey. Aubrey or Audrey. I thought it was Otterly with an O, but it's actually Audley. So I had it wrong both times.
Yeah.
He's not going to use a secret identity throughout, which also threw me. But he talks about how this must have something to do with the Middle East because he works on the Middle East desk. So then they go down to the boss's office where there's additional security. And then Terence Stamps asks what the ratty fuss is about this and what it's got to do with Middle East connections, to which his boss tells him it's not the Middle East, David. This is where I said snotty Brits. Then his boss, as a flex, makes him summarize a file and report on it immediately. So this is very interesting. I assume MI5 has now been replaced by ChatGPT based on the work they have them do. But yes, so now we get the backstory on this plane that the plane crashed in 56 from engine trouble. 3 people bailed out at least.
Mm-hmm.
The reason they know the Soviets wanted something to do with it is because the Soviets then killed 3 people in relation to it. And so the question is, what's on the plane? Robin Sachs, Hugh, mentions the engine trouble, and that's when the boss tells him that's not relevant. So it'll be interesting next episode if it is actually relevant, because the boss is like, you don't need to know why it crashed to figure out what was on it or something. But then we establish.
Is it ever established that the whatever cargo has been stolen from the crashed plane?
No.
And why they can't just go look at the crashed plane and figure out what the cargo was?
Because they presume the cargo hold, we find out much later, was empty.
Okay.
So it has been dumped somewhere. Yes. So this episode is called Flying Blind. If they were accurate, it would be called Flying Blind Part 1. But we'll get to the way the cliffhanger works for this episode. Unclear if it'll keep up in every episode, but maybe Emily will like that. Sorry. I mean, based on what women in 1983 liked anyway. So the boss is like, okay, David, you're going to actually be a field agent on this because we've decided your intel on the Middle East just sounds like you're parroting the Israelis.
Yeah.
So you're too predictable and you need to earn your keep. And so then he and Robin Sachs go stake out the funeral of the pilot where we meet a bunch of characters.
We meet a bunch of characters. We meet the former wife of the pilot, her daughter, who is also the daughter of the pilot, her new husband, who they've been married, who married the wife 20 years ago, at least.
So the plane crashed in 56.
Which was 27 years ago, is
in
what they keep saying.
83. Yeah. So he married her pretty soon. He consoled a grieving widow.
Yeah. And then there are 3 boys from that second marriage that we never really meet. They're just kind of in the background. So the wife, I listened to her voice. I was like, oh my God, that's Penelope Wilton. I love her. And I was like, there's no way she's that old. I looked on IMDb. She's not credited. Like, there's nobody credited on this episode. But I paused it at the credits at the end, and it's this woman named Tessa Worsley, who apparently is known for this voice. And I was like, it sounds exactly like Penelope Wilton. Exactly. And she even kind of looks like her, but it wasn't.
Did you add her to IMDb?
I did not add her to IMDb.
She's on the IMDb, man.
Is she?
She is. The very last person. Spoiler alert, TV credits are terrible on IMDb.
I have Oscar Keatak. I'm on the specific episode.
I am too. She's at the very bottom of the list.
I've got Oscar Keatak at the bottom of the list. Oh, all cast and crew. I'm sorry. I didn't look at the all cast. I'm dumb. Hi, I'm dumb.
Hi, dumb. I'm Andrew.
Oh boy.
Is this what happens after you watch too much Dracula the series?
It could be. I'm used to there being only like 4 people in an episode.
It's also weird that she's the last casted. The cast lists on TV on IMDb are terrible.
She has got a significant amount of lines in that one scene.
Yes, and she's very important to the episode.
Yeah.
So then Terence Stamp introduces himself as being with the Ministry of Defense, but he introduces himself with his regular name.
Yeah.
Somebody asked him if he knew the guy personally, and he's like, no, I just read up in his war record. Fine man. And they say they were all fine men in those days. And then the husband's like, listen, I know you're MI5. Why don't you get out of here?
Yeah.
But instead they go have a drink. And so this is based on a novel. So I can only imagine the novel gets into the specifics of who was on the plane better than this. But this guy knew the pilot, knew the wife.
They were in the same squadron. They were in the same squadron in the military.
Yes, but he was not on the plane as a crew member. He was on the plane as a passenger. Why this is important is that he was not involved in the
whatever legal or illegal going
smuggling. Yeah. Because basically, so it's black market smuggling out of Berlin. So again, maybe the novel gets into this, but there's a lot of lack of context for the sort of history involved here. Even when it directly impacts this narrative, Terence Stamp will say things like, I'm not really interested in World War II or the Nazis.
Yeah.
They're real downers, if you know what I mean. Israeli guy.
I love the Middle East. Yeah.
Shit, dude.
Yeah.
Wow, that's a flex. And he's like, I'm British. It's fine. Okay, we'll get to that. There's some very interesting characterizations of the Israelis where you're like, oh, they can have an apartheid state and still be discriminated against by Westerners. It's intersectional.
It's intersectional.
The one thing you can always rely on white people for is intersectional bigotry. That is kind of what we, when we support white supremacy, we put up the most intricate lines of support that we can find. But what this means is this guy does not have any information about the smuggling. And he's like, I knew they were smuggling, but you don't rat on your mates.
Yeah.
However, I've since found out this guy was a total piece of shit, so I have no problem ratting on him. He cheated on his wife when she was pregnant because he thought he was going to be an American president. And then they start talking about how, well, if it was so bad, why didn't you weed out the bad guys? And Terence Stamp's like, well, I was at Oxford at the time. I can't can't be held accountable. And so then they start talking about, then Terence Stamp, just out of nowhere, starts talking about like how it's his first day on a new job and like he really hopes he does a good job. And it's just this weird
it's weird because I feel like since the scene where he's in his boss's office and he's just kind of being thrown into this new assignment, this completely new role, there seems to be a lot going on in his brain that he's not necessarily speaking on. He seems to be really bitter that they're taking away his job and making him do this new thing, but he never actually vocalizes it until this moment. He's giving his boss attitude, but and saying, "But I'm the Middle East guy. Like, I'm the Middle East guy. Why do you have me doing this?" But he's vocalizing it here to other people. Like, this isn't my bag. I don't know. It's my first day. Give me a break. It's weird. Again,
Yeah.
I think the novel would probably have a little bit more of that internal dialogue.
We also didn't get to see Terence Stamp really we didn't get to see him at work before this.
No.
So our only like context for him outside of this is he made his own tea and watched a shitty fake gangster movie.
Yeah.
Like, even if it had been a real gangster movie, that would have been like offered something. But instead, he was watching, something less real than the movie in Home Alone.
Like 4 lines of dialogue from a movie. Yeah.
Yeah. So we also find out that the survivors of the plane didn't think that the pilot died.
Yeah.
They were surprised that he was on the plane dead. They thought he just had his big score and ran off. Okay. Now we cut back to Robin Sachs, the young guy, who I've got written down as Hill, but he's Hugh. And his last name is Roskill, which does not sound like Hill. So basically, all of this is going to be it's going to be like St. John. Every British name in this is going to be like St. John. But here he's talking to the boss and he's like, "You've got to snoop on David for us." And he's like, "I don't want to." He's like, "Well, now, chap, this job isn't just a bunch of good, clean fun. You need to do this too." But the boss says he's been sideways into a good job, whereas the other guy who doesn't like him, Llewellyn, I think.
Yeah, Llewellyn.
Thinks Llewellyn's in the bag with the Arabists, not the Israelis. So he doesn't like Terence Stamp on the Middle East desk. So this was particularly interesting for me because the British and Palestine is a giant tale of bungled imperialism and colonialism. And basically, one side backed Israel and the other side backed the what became Saudi Arabia. And so you're still seeing that play out 40 years later on British television and in British spy novels. Anyway, so Robin's got to write up a couple of reports every week. And then he asks for the name for the assignment. And I was waiting for them to say Chessgame. But instead, no, it is Lucretia, presumably after Lucretia Borgia. And is that because he's betraying it? I don't know.
I don't know.
They share a look about it. They're at their public school. There was they learned about the story of Lucretia, so they both get it. This is the classiest, like in terms of classismisty British show I've watched in a while. Like, I sort of forgot how classist they are. Because the reason Terence Stamp can tell the husband that he doesn't like his new job is because he's a working class guy. Who the fuck's he gonna tell that Terence Stamp's unhappy at MI5? That guy can't talk to shit. Okay. So then David checks in with Hugh and they talk about, and now we get a slight recap of the scene with the husband, but with a little bit more information.
Mm-hmm.
This is where we find out that they never saw anything in the cargo hold. And then there was where does he describe? Because maybe they are together. I don't know. But basically, I think I skipped over it, but the husband describes somebody he saw to Terence Stamp, or somebody described somebody who saw it at Terence Stamp.
Oh
And it's
yeah.
like a description like, yeah, he had brown hair and a
Yeah.
mustache.
So
And Terence Stamp's like, I know who that is.
yeah, and it's his rival, Ivan
Igor Palin.
yes, thank you. And
His niece was the governor of Alaska.
he describes this is in the recap. These guys are hanging out. These Hungarians or these guys claiming to be Hungarian are hanging out trying to get information. But they
were really Russian.
He introduced them to Hungarian freedom fighters who have no patience for Russians and discovered that this was all a ploy. So at this point, we're kind of suspecting that there are Russians after him, right? That are going to be involved in this. Because it's the Cold War. Yay!
It's the Cold War. It's the very end of the Cold War. This is, yeah. But they describe this guy, and it's like he's a white guy with brown hair and a mustache. And Terence Stamp's just like, he's very determined.
Yes, with a very determined look on his face.
And Terence Stamp's like, I know exactly who that is. Mm-hmm. It's his nemesis, Igor Palin, who looks like he does not look like a spy. He looks very much like a middle-aged bureaucrat, and nothing like that. He does not look very determined either.
Well, so maybe he's describing him from 27 years ago. Maybe 27 years ago he looked more like a spy.
But yes, so we cut to this guy's office, presumably in Moscow, where he sees something about the plane. And he's like, "Welcome back, Mr. Steelforth."
Yeah.
End of part 1. Yeah. Now, this was Granada, right? Did they have actual commercials? Is this a commercial break? Yeah.
I think so.
So, yeah, that is the big difference is Granada was ITV, I think. Mm-hmm. And so they had commercials, whereas BBC did not. Also, big Granada of the time was the Sherlock Holmes adaptation. Okay. So, part 2, starting at David's farmhouse. The first exterior of the farmhouse. He could be anywhere else, too, at this point, except the daughter pulls up behind him. And they sort of have this meet cute / questioning thing where the stepdad didn't tell her anything, but David thinks he did, but knows she was eavesdropping on the stepdad and the mom got super upset because even though she thought her father was a hero, now she knows that he was a smuggler. There's a great moment where she's like, "You think my dad was great, right?" And he's like, "I think your dad was a very courageous man and a fine pilot." And it's like, when he was smuggling shit from Berlin, like, as he was committing crimes.
He's really careful about not revealing too much information right away.
And so then she tells him about how these weird people were always used to come around when she was a kid.
Foreigners. They keep using foreigners.
Yeah. Foreigners comes up a lot in this. Yeah. I'm sorry. That's a lot better than where we're going.
That should have been one of my 3 things. The foreigners.
Foreigners. This is very British. All of these people voted for Brexit. Every single person alive in this episode, all of them, the actors included. Terence Stamp was like, Brexit, 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 let's do it. I'll guest star on John Cleese's show about how I'm being canceled. Okay. So then we get this.
I just Googled it. Oh, yeah. Not a good guy. Yeah. No one speaks English is a quote from this article. Okay, I'm done. I can't believe I just looked that up. I'm such a fool. Okay, I'm sorry. I just derailed it.
Well, maybe you won't want to go into the priest hole with him every episode now. Anyway, moving on. Jesus Christ, Terence Stamp. We just need a moment.
Lee Pace. I'm better.
Daniel Radcliffe.
Great,
apparently. I don't think I have any interest in ever seeing him act, but he certainly seems pretty good.
Yeah, seems like a nice guy.
Can't wait till they interview him about the neo-Nazis they cast on the Harry Potter show. Okay, moving on. Sorry, foreigners at the top of my list still. So he offers to give her some dinner. He's like, this is also him being charming. He's like, would you like to help? And she's like, I'd love to help. And he's like, okay, you can set the table and I'll get the stew. Something's wrong with his stew. We don't establish what, but he pulls it out and he sniffs it and he puts it away.
Yeah.
He did not pull it out of the refrigerator. So unless he has a mini fridge and a full-size fridge, the implication is he doesn't refrigerate the stew. And we get the backstory on the stew in a bit, so it's very weird.
Yeah.
So instead they have cheese and crackers.
Sounds like a great date to me.
There you go. You could talk about how the fucking foreigners don't speak English, apparently, with Terence Stamp, Emily.
Stop.
God. God. Oh. It's okay. I was listening to a podcast that was talking about how John Oliver talks about things that, you really don't need to pay attention to any of that stuff. And I'm like, he's the bare minimum of informed. And I'm like, oh, the guy who was talking about it, he's a millionaire. Yeah, he doesn't really care that farm workers get fucked. Okay. Moving on. Back on track. I feel like there are going to be more diversions.
Yes.
Cut to the office. They're setting up a desk.
Yeah, for
Hugh in Terence Stamp's office.
Yeah.
That like the door just opens wide enough that Hugh can sit at his desk and then they'll be in there together.
Yeah.
So space is they can't get their own, room for this. They need
MI5 at the height of the Cold War. Well, maybe not the height of the Cold War. Doesn't have room for this gentleman to have his own office.
No. They would have to have an office together because they're working together.
Yeah, I guess.
Here's where Terence Stamp comes in. And he was like, did you have a good night? And he's like, hell yeah, I did. The daughter of JS stayed the night. And the secretary's just like, yikes.
Yeah.
And gets out of there. And Terence Stamp's like, what's her fucking problem?
Yeah.
And the guy's like, maybe she doesn't want to hear about your sex life, dude. And Terence Stamp is like, sex? I put the evening to far better use. I got details.
Yeah.
So then he assigns Hugh a job to write up a dossier on the other two survivors.
Mm-hmm.
And Hugh's weird. And so Terence Stamp's like, I mean, if you have to fill out your report on me first, that's fine. And he's like,
I'm sure they're having you write reports on me too. And he's like, no. He's been at this too long. This other guy's a little green. He knows exactly what's happening.
And Hugh's like, well, I won't tell them. And Terence Stamp's like, I'm going to go talk to my Israeli buddies. And the guy's like, oh, they don't like you having Israeli buddies, so I won't mention that. And Terence Stamp's like, you will mention that, otherwise you're going to end up like me someday.
Yeah.
Which just sounds swell. Like, I don't know. Maybe this is what happened to Jordan Peterson. Okay. We then start cutting to shots of the foreigner. We forgot to mention this. At the funeral, there is a very distinct leaving flowers. This guy is now staking out something we don't quite know yet.
Mm-mm.
But we then have the daughter, whose name is Faith, in a kitchen. She's in Terence Stamp's kitchen, but it took me a second to realize that because I'm like, we've never seen it during the day and we don't know where she lives. And it's a little weird. She's there after he's at work, presumably at 9 a.m. Like, what was she doing? Phone rings. She lets it ring, but like maybe writes it down. Doesn't matter.
She sees the three men coming up the road.
She sees the three men. She does not think, those look like foreigners to me. Instead, she's like, well, how are you this fine morning at this remote, isolated farmhouse? And they're like, we're fine. We're here to buy the car. And they're like, well, he's gone to London. And she's like, he's gone to London. And they're like, well, okay, thanks. They immediately get to London to follow David.
Yeah.
Or it's a different guy who looks exactly the same, but
it's hard
David
to tell.
is now going into a shop and the guy is across the street watching them.
Yeah.
I think my note is different but similar guy. Okay, so they're in an antiquarian bookstore. It is sadly not the antiquarian bookstore with a vampire living upstairs with his
No.
dummy.
No.
So that didn't happen. Instead, it is David meeting with his Israeli spy friend who runs the bookstore.
This scene caught me off guard a little bit because they're having a conversation, but it almost feels like they're speaking in code, like the entire time.
Yeah.
It's, I have a problem. I have a 14-year-old daughter and I need to get her a gift for her birthday and I just don't know what to get her. And it's like, and he's like, I don't have any children. I don't know what to get your daughter. It's weird. It was a weird.
It's weird
scene.
And I think this is one of the second or third scene where Terence Stamp does the whispering thing, but he does it again later. And I don't think they really seem to know what they're doing about it, because at some point he's just like, I don't know, man, why don't you get her a bracelet? And it's like the other guy gives no indication that he's heard him say that.
Yeah.
Terence Stamp does not repeat it to him. And he does this a couple other times in the episode where he just has an aside to himself.
He's just kind of being snarky, and it's weird. Yeah, it comes off weird as being snarky. Yeah.
But then they talk about how somebody stole something about Israel.
Somebody got into their apartment and stole some documents and whatever.
And so basically Terence Stamp's saying, no, we didn't do that, even if we have the documents or something.
Yeah.
And then they start talking about, oh no, this is when the guy's like, I don't know anything about your 1956 shit. Suez and the Cold War are not my field. You need to ask Theo, the great Nazi hunter.
Yeah.
Okay. We then cut immediately to him going to see Theo, the great Nazi hunter. Apparently the pilot was smuggling jewels out of Berlin. Don't know. I mean, 56, who knows what they were. Like, somebody stole them from somebody and they were smuggling them out on the black market. This is also where they have the excellent sherry and Terence Stamp sipping it and goes, very naughty. And I'm just kind of like,
did he say naughty or did he say nutty? As if,
did he say nutty or naughty? I thought he said naughty.
I thought he said naughty at first, and then the second time I thought he said nutty, as if like it has, I don't know.
Nut sense. I thought it had not sense. I don't know. We don't drink enough sherry.
I don't drink any sherry.
We need to drink sherry with this show. This is when he tells the great Nazi hunter, who appears to be of a good age to have survived World War II.
Yeah.
World War II and the Nazis, they're not really in my interest.
Yeah, not my bag. Not my bag.
The guy, I can't believe the actor must have made this choice, because given the episode, I can't believe that it was in, like, the director was thinking about it. But the guy just kind of looks at him like, man, fuck you.
Yeah,
like, really, dude? Really? Okay. All right.
And that guy, cute little old man, won't go into his politics, but he was on a bunch of stuff. I looked him up the other day. Where did he go? Theo, Oscar Keatak. He was on, he was in Brazil. I mean, if you like that sort of thing. And French and Saunders, Howard's Way TV series. He was in a bunch of stuff. I love British television because everybody works with everybody. Like,
yeah.
Anyway.
But yes, so then he tells him, oh, well, do you know about blah, blah, blah in German or something? And Terence Stamp's like, no, I told you, I don't care about that shit. And he's like, well, you're in physical danger. Your personal safety is in danger. Are you sure you weren't followed here, dude?
Yeah. Like, I feel like I'm not safe now because you're here talking to me.
Because you came in here.
Yeah.
Fucking jackass Brit. Okay. So then we cut to the bosses talking. And here it is. So now we're getting back into what he's reporting on. So this is the boss who thinks David's going to do good as a field agent, and the other guy who wanted him off the Middle East desk for parroting reports from I'm sorry, what do they call the Israelis? The Red Sea pedestrians.
Yeah.
I'm just kind of like,
I mean, it could
you
be
guys,
worse.
it could be worse,
It's
but
still
it's
not
like,
great.
as a euphemism, it's very like, it's like somebody sat around and thought that up. Like,
Yeah.
how do we say this just to say
Or it was
really?
in common use and they just took it.
Okay, but then we establish that the other guy says there's not, he doesn't have any personal problems with David. The boss doesn't seem sure of that, but end part two,
Yeah.
start of part three. Now, I think part three is much longer than the other parts because now Miss Faith calls the office
Mm-hmm.
to tell them to leave a message about the three foreigners at his farmhouse, and then and selling his car, and everybody's like, they're not selling that piece of shit car. Nobody wants his car.
I want his car. I like that car. That was
It
cute.
was a cute little car. So then we cut to Hugh interviewing one of the other survivors, but this guy he owns a model shop because the weird thing about British men and their clubs and their sherry and their casual racism is they're still 7 or 8 year old boys. So
Yeah.
there you go. And that seems to sum up their politics as well. That explains everything. um, okay. But we have some weird banter about buying a Pembroke plane.
Yeah.
Like Hugh's like, I want one in life size. And the guy's like, the hell are you talking about? This is a model shop.
He's
And he's
being
like,
really
didn't you see?
he's doing a really bad job at like being sort of a snarky bad guy. Like, like I'm trying to get information from this guy, so I'm gonna just throw in weird random things and have this guy go, "What the fuck are you talking about?" This is a
Yeah.
model shop, dude. And then he's like, "Oh, but I know that you were in this plane with this guy at this time. But what were you doing?" And it's like, that was a long time ago. I wasn't expecting this. Like, it was very
And
weird.
so we established that the model shop guy was just the lookout. He didn't know what was in the boxes.
Yes.
Okay. Uh, I don't know what the transition is here before the car wash scene, which
Yes,
is
that's
very
right.
weird. But
It's
there
it's
is a scene, and my note for it is: are they actually drinking a Coke? Because I think there's a shot of someone
so
very clearly
the
drinking a Coke.
transition isn't it the Theo and the antiquarian book guy like meet on the
Yes,
street
yes,
and they have a
yes,
brief casual
yes.
conversation, but it's actually about David having visited them and blah 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 blah. I remember that because the car wash scene immediately after that is another one of those weird spy tropes where it's like we have to go through doing this normal everyday thing so nobody can see us talking, and it's so weird. It's so weird.
Well, it's especially weird because, yes, so we have that scene in front of Theo's building, apparently, but the bookstore guy who's drinking the Coke is like spread out on a statue, like lounging, like he's spending his afternoon in public. It'd be like if you were at the New York Public Library and you set up like a parasol on their steps and we're just like talking to people as they,
Just
well,
lounging on the lions, right? Just
lounging on the lions. Yeah, like riding a lion while
yeah.
drinking your Coca Cola. Okay. 1983 could have been a Coke too. Okay, but yes, so then we get the car wash scene, which is Hugh and David exposition dumping to each other
Mm-hmm.
and making their plans for what they're going to do next. They're going to go see the model shop guy again directly. Now, they're being all spy in their fucking car wash,
Mm-hmm.
but then they immediately hang out together. So it's just like, why were you being spy-y in a car wash when you're just going to go hang out together?
Right.
They go back to the shop where
They have to break
Terence
in.
Stamp
Yeah.
Terence Stamp breaks in, and Hugh's like, "That's a felony, sir." And he's like, well, in that case, you can call me David. And then Hugh's like, righto, sir, because they're British. Here's where I can't imagine the scene wasn't supposed to go better, but Hugh finds the guy dead at the bottom of the stairs, and he's like, he's dead. And Terrence Stamp's like, what do you mean he's dead? Get him up. And he's like, no, he's dead as in not breathing. And I'm like, how did Terrence Stamp not know that? Like, what else do you
I
call
wonder
dead?
if this
He's
was
dead tired.
I wonder if this was supposed to be a comedy beat that just didn't work out, or like,
Right.
I don't know. It kind of seemed that way to me, that it was supposed to be, I don't know.
It
I
was
don't know.
very, yeah, it was quirky. I mean, that's kind of the thing with this is there's Terrence Stamp's charming enough that, like, when he's telling us how nobody in Britain speaks British anymore, we can be like, oh, he's just so charming when he says that. This show gets away with quite a bit of, yeah, that beat didn't work, but Terrence Stamp's really fun to watch, so it's
Yeah.
fine. Um, we then cut back to them at the office where it's Terrence Stamp and the other dude from before, whose name we said, but also said it wasn't important, washing up together because, you have a little wee and then you talk in the men's room as you do. And he's like, so is it an accident? And he's like, no, it's not an accident. But the police think it is, and we're going to let them.
Yeah.
But Hugh saw a female traffic warden when they were on shift change. So clearly she's the murderer. And
Yeah.
you're just kind of like, why don't they? And we saw her when they arrived and stuff. So there's an establishing shot. But it's kind of like, shouldn't the police be able to figure that shit out too? Like, this isn't, this again, this is Chat GPT level shit. This
Yeah.
is Chat GPT checking a witness list versus a like timetable.
I've seen enough true crime to know that, the local authorities are going to take the lead until they realize it's out of, it's something bigger and they need to report it up, or they need help with something, right? So I feel like at that ground level, it would be like, hey, let's find out who that woman was. Hey, why don't we do that? But no, it just
Hugh
goes away.
didn't tell them, or
Yeah.
Hugh did not give an accurate report to the local constabulary.
And I don't read generally I don't think I've ever read a spy novel. Maybe like The Man Who Was Thursday or whatever. But I I don't know if if the novel would be fleshing this out and explaining away some of these inconsistencies,
It's gonna
if the
depend.
type of person who reads spy novels just doesn't care.
As I recall, spy novels are incredibly verbose. So I
Okay.
bet you would get a full breakdown on it, though maybe not. I mean, but they're very verbose as far as explaining their supporting cast and things like that. Okay, now we cut to dinner for David and Faith at a nice restaurant.
Oh, yes. Beautiful restaurant.
And it's a French place. And they're talking about how she never knew her dad. And it's weird. And Terrence Stamp's like, it's kind of weird. She married the other pilot.
Yeah.
And the daughter's like, well, the squadron was mom's way of family because that's who she lived by. So it was her social circle. And then they start talking about the chaps in the car. What kind of chaps were they? Well, they were foreign chaps. And then he's like, well, what sort of ages? And she's just like, I don't know, 3 blokes, middling. Let's talk about your evocative kitchen. And he's like, what were their heights, Faith? And he's like getting really confrontational.
Yeah.
And then she's like, is this business or pleasure tonight, David? And he's like, well, I mean, it's business, obviously.
Yeah. That's why I keep asking you these questions, ding dong.
And then she's like, stuff it, David. If you want to know this stuff, get a warrant.
Yeah.
And he had told her before that, it's great that it's business because we get to write it off.
Yeah.
And her zinger as she leaves is, eat up, it's on expenses. So this is pretty cool.
It was pretty fun. It was pretty fun little scene between the two of them. I was a little bit annoyed about how she was portrayed. Like she couldn't just like suck it up and enjoy the meal and the time with this person that she presumably has some romantic interest in.
What year would you say women started being well portrayed on British television?
I don't know.
Do you think it was in the 90s? Or do you think they had to wait till the 2000s?
Probably the 2000s.
Yeah.
I don't. Yeah.
Yeah. It's not a great characterization. We'll get into a bit of it in a bit.
But I have a theory that I might not talk about on the podcast, but we can talk about after.
Okay. But here we cut to the Israeli Secret Service where the antiquarian bookshop owner wants to be let in. And somebody's like, dude, you can't come here, because I think it's the embassy. And he's like, oh, whatever. Everybody in London knows I'm a spy. Cut the crap. What's up? And he busts out, the guy there busts out the report. The bookshop is bugged. They know all of the contents of the conversation that he had, and including about the bracelet. But then they show him the photos of all the people who've been watching David. These are stills from the episode. So they are the shots of the actor.
How did I miss this scene? I do not remember this scene.
And this is where my note is: the Israelis have been filming the whole episode because they are, they're not spy photos. It's a close up of the guy leading on the car. And you're just like, that's the shot from the episode.
Yeah.
I'm impressed that you printed that, but
they didn't take B-roll of like him walking into the antiquarian bookstore, or they didn't take any B-roll of
too much trouble. But then whatever happened to the cargo, who knows? We then cut back to David's farmhouse, where again Faith has arrived. And so they have a little bit more cute banter where he's like, aren't you a little hungry? And she's like, I am a little hungry. And he's like, are you here for business or a social call? And she's like, well, I'm here to apologize, which I suppose is social.
Yeah.
And here is where
he says something like, I've been focused on work. Mm-hmm. I owe you an apology.
I'm trying to feed you the lie.
Oh, sorry.
Wait for it. He says, I'm sorry I was so wrapped up in work, ...
I didn't
he said,
I didn't see you as, and then she finishes his sentence with a bit of crumpet. And he's sort of like taken aback, because this is not how a lady acts.
No.
And makes some comment that I didn't catch, and then they kind of giggle and go inside.
And here's where we get the explanation of the stew, which I wish I'd written down the whole thing, because it's fucking weird. This guy has the squirts every week of his life. Okay? Like, this is not how you, especially if you don't refrigerate it. He makes a stew on Sunday. By Wednesday, if you add tomato sauce, I'm doing this from memory, I didn't write it down. He makes it into a risotto. He does something else to it the next day, but then by Saturday, he has the leftovers for a curry. And I'm just kind of like, that's probably not good for your intestinal situation, my dude. Like,
I recall he turns it into a bolognese, turns it into
the bolognese comes after the risotto.
And then he turns it into what's the Hungarian dish?
Goulash. No, he makes
goulash.
Yes, you're right. Goulash.
Yeah.
And then somehow he makes curry from the leftover goulash.
Yeah, doesn't sound great.
No. And here we get a little backstory on him. He explains he was married for 8 years. This is actually like a well-acted scene, so it's like, this is a moment of good television. But yeah, so she thought she hated his job, but it turned out she just hated him. So they broke up, and then we hear the geese cackle. But first, he shushes her.
Mm-hmm.
And she apologizes to him and asks him what kind of questions he would prefer she ask him. And he's like, shh, no, the geese. He's like, ask me why I got the geese. And I'm like, is this a fucking David Mamet episode already? All of a sudden? And she's like, why did you get the geese? And he's like, I got the geese because a Roman general used to keep geese because they cackle if there was a sneak attack.
Yeah.
And she's just like, okay. And he's like, there's a sneak attack. We got to go. They go upstairs. He takes the wine bottle with him, which implies some things that he is going to seem surprised by in a second. Thank you. Sadly, it's not a video podcast, so they can't see this.
That's okay.
Basically, Emily's over there making peaches and what's the other one? Eggplants or whatever. Yeah. Stop it. Stop distracting me.
Sorry, I'm embarrassing.
They go upstairs. He's got a secret hideout in his bedroom. He's got a priest hole in his house. His house is awesome.
Yeah,
like
his house is
cool. They found a very nice filming location.
Yeah.
But yes, they go upstairs into the priest hole, and she's scared of confined spaces, but the Russians, who know they're in there, throw a rock through the second story window, which scares her enough to go into the priest hole. They go in behind this flimsy door in what looks like a closet. And he's like, don't worry, they'll never find us in here. He's got the wine. He lights a lamp. And they're like, how long is this going to take? He's like, it might take all night. Who knows what those Russians are doing out there? And she's like, Russians? What's this about? And he's like, oh, I've got plenty of time to just explain that in the morning. And then she says, was this all an elaborate plan to get me into bed? And he says, no, but that's quite all right by me.
No,
and then
no,
she's like,
no. He says no, and she goes, well, that would be all right with me. She says it.
Oh,
she says it.
See, I don't know this stuff
down to pound, baby. Down to pound.
Well, let's not forget, she's got to work in a little bit of, they both got to be a little problematic here. She's like,
yeah, that's right.
That's good. I was worried you were one of those queer intelligence men I've been reading about. And he responds, no, that's the other crowd. Wink. And I'm like, what other crowd? What's the joke there?
I don't know. I don't know what they're referring to. I don't have that deep of a knowledge
of 1983 British middle class passive bigotry. You're not sure.
Well, or of military intelligence or any kind of intelligence agencies in the UK. Or politics. I know nothing.
You also have to remember that they decriminalized homosexuality in the 60s, so they don't have the same. Some of their bigotry has been imported. They actually stopped with their own shit and waited a few decades to import it from the US. But yes, so then the episode ends, presumably with them getting their banging on. They're going to be banging while the Russians are searching the house.
I thought the same thing. It's like, you have to be so
he's like,
you have to be so
you're
quiet.
Gonna be so disappointed in this. I know you're like, oh, that's Terence Stamp. He's General Zod. I'm ready to bow before Zod. He's like, you got to be so fucking quiet or they will kill us. But yes, so they're going to have some very quiet sex. And then
the end.
After 7 minutes, they'll have the wine and wait out the night. And I was like, I can't believe that this is the end of the first episode.
I know. I was excited though.
I was like, this is a very weird place to end the episode, but also that's cool. I'm down. They're nice together. I mean, there are some problems.
They're charming. They're both attractive.
They're charming.
They've got a cute chemistry. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, no, I mean, it's a real show. It's very different from what we're used to.
She's significantly younger than him, but that's...
Well, I mean...
Yeah.
You were DTF until you read about his politics, and he's 82 now or whatever, right?
Yeah, he's 84 or something. Yeah.
There you go.
Oh.
Almost like everybody should just died.
Hey, Terrence, I speak English. That's my pickup line.
What a fucking... Is there a single one of those people who isn't a piece of shit?
I don't know.
Doesn't there have to be one? Doesn't there have to be?
I don't know.
Probably not. There you go, listeners. find us a British actor who worked in the 80s who isn't a piece of shit today. Because Rowan Atkinson's a piece of shit too, everybody. Don't
Oh, is
forget.
he?
Oh God, he made a like 32-part original series for Netflix about him attacking a bug. And everybody's like, why the fuck is this a series of 10-minute episodes? This is weird. What is this? And he's like, this is about being canceled. And everybody's like, it's about him trying to kill a bug. Like, it's not about him being, yeah. Rowan Atkinson, John Cleese. Yeah.
Yeah, he's bad.
None of them.
Bad guy.
The Beatles are both like, icky foreign people. Only George Harrison.
Well, the woman, Carmen de Satoy, she doesn't seem to have had any have any opinions on Brexit. That she
is she a British subject?
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Born in London.
Okay.
Anyway.
Yeah, but that's just because she's a woman over the age of 35, so nobody cares what she says anymore.
Yeah, that's true.
There you go. Was she talking about Meghan Markle? Do that. There's
yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that'll be bad.
Google. Okay, so that's Emily's.
I like that's the litmus test. We've got what were their opinions on Meghan Markle? What are their opinions on Brexit? I don't see anything.
Quote,
I don't see anything.
Does Meghan Markle even speak English?
Oh God. Poor Meghan Markle. Okay. Well, that was a delightful episode of television.
It was a delightful episode, folks. When you watch it, you don't think about how they're all a bunch of racists today.
Yes.
You're just like, everybody was racist in 1983. That's just the way
take it for red. It's the Cold War, so there's going to be bad stuff happening with Russians as well. It's, there's a lot of still in the 80s, a lot of Middle East stuff happening. So there's going to be racism around that. So we just have to just accept that it is part of the culture, the world that this was made in, and it's wrong, but we're watching it. So maybe next time we won't have to talk about it. I'm going to go cry now.
Maybe, or next time.
We'll just write down our list of their euphemisms for foreign people.
It's 1983. She could break up with him for having a Jewish friend. It's 1983. We could see that. Yes. So yeah, and yes, as a fan of British television, it's very well. I mean, there's full-on slurs in Faulty Towers that they were like, "This is fine," and it was 78 or 79, and now they've taken it out of like the U.S. releases, but it's still in the other ones somewhere, and you're just like, it wasn't. It was super yikes, dude, and you shouldn't have waited until 2015 to notice that. Yeah, because British people, they can't be racist because they were against slavery. Remember they got rid of slavery first or whatever, but they didn't. But they said they did because they were better. Yes. So, but yes, for British television, there is British television. I don't know if there's anything about the 80s, but the British have finally started having a more truthy perception of themselves in history.
Yes.
Very slight. Yes. And not a lot of them, but a little bit. They're acknowledging maybe we were super racist, sexist, and bigoted until I don't know, yesterday.
Yeah,
but it's slowly changing.
Very like everything is slowly changing. The next episode 2 of Chessgame is called Cold War Game. Speaking of the Cold War, and the cast list includes many of the same people. It looks like we won't see Mom again. We won't see her stepdad, but Carmen de Satoy is in it again. Hopefully this does not wrap up her involvement in the TV show, but I fear that it might.
I sort of wonder if he's going to have a different leading lady every two-parter. What I assume right now is we're going to have 3 two-parters, basically.
Yeah.
And he's going to...
I think that's what I, in my investigating, came up with, that it's mostly two-parters. Oh, she's in the 3rd episode, too. Okay. I'm feeling a little bit better.
dies in the third episode. She
No.
dies, and they put her in a refrigerator in his house,
No.
and her death is going to motivate him to be a better action hero.
No. I don't want her to die. I like her.
James Bond. I do too. Okay. So there you go.
Okay.
Anything
So
else?
no, I think that's it. Thank you all for listening. Andrew, see you in television land.
See you in television land, Emily.
Bye-bye.